Welcome one and all to the Stock Up Podcast, your one-stop shop for stocking up on the information you need to qualify for the Pro Tour. My name is Alex. I'm joined as always by one Jacob Negro. Jacob, you have a Pro Tour coming up this weekend. What are you doing at home still?
Yeah, I'm leaving in a couple days. Right now we're recording on a Tuesday night. Deck submission is Wednesday, 10 a.m. my time. I'll probably submit my deck right after this, see if my team has any updates. And I can always submit it again in the morning. But
okay, if you
I feel
decide
pretty
to
happy
change
with my
something.
deck. Yep, can't share it right now, but now usually the night before is when I'd submit for the first time anyways. There's no real reason to just type one up ahead of time. But, you know, in case my internet's out in the morning, I'll make sure I get it done tonight.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Your deck list will be in, so I guess you could post your deck list to Patreon before the Pro Tour. I don't know if that's something that you could... Is that something you could do? It's like leak something of any sort? Like once your deck's submitted?
I wouldn't want to do that. It would mean, you know, if somebody qualified for the Pro Tour is listening, they'd realize they could join the Patreon and get a deck list. And, you know, they have like all of Thursday to test against decks or whatever. And I am on a team.
Oh, I see.
I'm not going to disclose whether or not, you know, me and other people on the team are all playing the same deck even to begin with. But it's just like, and I don't even know, you know, I know a lot of people listening probably haven't played Pro Tours before or been on teams, but people love to change their deck at the last minute with 30 minutes before the deck submission. They decide the deck they've been trying is terrible and they just register stock blue-green or something. Like it happens all the time.
Well, this Pro Tour has been a really fast turnaround. Faster than usual. I know it's been faster over the last few years or so, but
yeah, I mean, like Final Fantasy and Aether Drift were the same turnaround, I think, from the release of the set, but there wasn't an RC of the same format 1 week before. So that's pretty new. And, you know, so
gotcha.
Now if you look at the data from Portland, it seems like Airbending might be the new public enemy number one. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the most popular deck at the Pro Tour, actually. And on top of that, you know, Tristan Wild LaRue, one of my friends, and he would have been part of my team if he was qualified. But he won the whole event with kind of a brew. You know, he cut all the Ouroboros. He still had one in the sideboard. Splashed some colors, and it looked like it on multiple occasions. The cards he was splashing, they were kind of like Nature's Rhythm tutor targets, but he also played 4 Formidable Speakers. So like the way you could think about his deck is like he cut Ouroboros for a Formidable Speaker and then kind of didn't increase the number of toolboxy cards, but instead of them being like Reclamation Sage or something, they're like Bright Glass Gearhulk with a Seam Rip and a Might Rider's Resolve and also 4 Mockingbird. So, you know, he can Mockingbird the Gearhulk, off Gearhulk, stuff like that. Keep chaining them.
So you have more access to it. Yeah, that card's kind of cool in that deck because I assume one of the ways you could lose with it is you just have like too much air. You can't find your payoffs, and it's just another way to find your payoffs. Kind of like adding more Nature's Rhythm.
Yeah, and it's like Ouroboros ultimately is just a power and toughness thing that kind of, it's like not very fitting if you actually play the deck, besides that you do control a lot of creatures, so it's obviously powerful there, but it's kind of a card that it's slow's not the right word, right? Because like in 2 combats you'll probably have lethal, and that comes up all the time, I'm sure, but I think Tristan was more looking to either interact or just get it done with Crater Hoof.
Yeah, definitely like a plan B, the Ouroboros, which is funny because it's called, that's like the namesake of the deck.
Yeah, it's a horrible name for the deck. Andre Strosky had mentioned that like a week ago on Twitter, that like, why do they call it Ouroboros? That's like the 6th best card in their deck.
It should just be Cub, right?
Yeah, like Cub, Riddler, Nature's Rhythm. Yeah, so in the end they ended up calling it 4-color Rhythm, which I think is a much better name for his deck.
Yeah, so
even though, like, also watching the event, the Formidable Speakers of that tournament in general, I have to imagine got Cub more than anything. You know, it's just more Cubs. They're just so strong in multiples. That makes sense. I never thought about that, honestly. Even in our Pro Tour testing, like the speaker just giving you access to more Cubs while also being a mana sink for Cub is still worth it yet again for 1 more mana than like Nature's Rhythm even. No, it does produce mana with Cub really nicely. You know, as you get a bunch of Cubs into play, the Formidable Speaker, if one of those lands taps for 3, then the Speaker's tapping for 2. So it's pretty relevant.
Tap, yeah. Which when we were talking about our top 10 cards, that's one of the things we mentioned. And
also the Formidable Speaker, like the untap ability is also better as you play a deck more built around just tutoring lots of cubs. Like for
Right. That was
each cub you
something that
have, it basically taps for a mana if you still have the Earthman land or any mana dork, I guess. So it
mhm.
actually ends up working out pretty well. It seemed like in his deck, to just Speaker for a cub. And then also, that kind of makes it accelerates just your other things a lot better, like Riddler and Nature's Rhythm, stuff like that. It makes sense.
Totally. So, I mean, in theory, people could just pick up his deck, right? If they thought it was really
Yeah.
good, they played it.
Yeah, I mean,
It's kind of
it's
interesting.
a
Sure, you
real,
guys thought about that a little bit, but
yeah. It'll be interesting to see. I'm pretty excited to see the metagame. And yeah, I mean, if you look at the stats from the weekend, even though they didn't make the finals, Airbending had almost a positive matchup spread across the entire board. Um, it won
yeah, I
Atlanta
did
with
see that. That seemed
with
crazy.
kind of the upgrade in deck building with the Web Watch, which ended up being a really powerful card from Spider-Man. And now it has upgraded mana and Formidable Speaker in some number. Which that deck, too, maybe Tristan winning the RC will teach these airbending players that Formidable Speaker is better than it looks, because what you're actually supposed to do is get Cub a lot of the time, and maybe they weren't thinking about that.
Yeah, get more cub, and then they're a creature combo deck, so they can get their pieces.
Yeah, they can
I
airbend
can
the
see that being
Speaker
good
and get
there
the pieces
too.
again. It's a little awkward with it's a cards in hand issue as you get into the airbending loops for sure, but
Sure.
and when you tutor
Yeah.
pieces to
Well,
hand,
good luck,
they can
man.
just full
It'll be
retail.
fun.
So yeah, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited. I feel really
I'm
good
uh,
about it.
I'm gonna be watching.
Nice.
Cool. Right on. To avoid talking about standard, we're gonna go ahead and do our sealed episode, which also is gonna be pretty fun. I mean, I've been playing Lorwyn Eclipsed. I'll admit I've mostly been drafting. I'm getting ready for
Yeah.
the sealed event this weekend though, and
Yep,
it's been
Arena
fun.
Direct for collector boxes this weekend. Hopefully, I won't have time to play them, but
Yeah, you might.
see.
Hey, at least still gives you something to do if you don't day two and you're in your
Yeah,
hotel room crying or something. Yeah, you can
yeah,
cry over your laptop, over all your collector boxes. You'll win. Yeah. Okay, so we're just gonna go through the set, and what we typically do is point out the cards that either A are like splashable or pull you towards the color, or we might point out cards that maybe look bad, but actually are pretty decent in a sealed environment if you need extra playables.
yeah. It's kind of a preface because I don't think we've talked about limited in the set at all. Is that this set is about the five kind of types having major synergy, the ones that match the Shocklands in this set. Um, so elementals, merfolk, kithkin, elves, and goblins. Um, and in draft, if you look at the data, for example, it's pretty clear that decks that end up basically very on theme, especially among merfolk, kithkin, and elves, those three in particular, are some of the better decks you can draft. But the data, I think, if anything, it's a lesson for data in all sets. In this set, I think it's particularly obvious that you can't just get a deck with 18 elves every draft or 18 of the same creature type at all every draft. And I think a lot of the data stems from people who did actually accomplish that basically and have this really cohesive and strong deck with all the right synergies. And then obviously in sealed, you have no control over that, but it's useful to know those things that yes, if you do get a very kind of on synergy on theme deck, all the same type of creature, including changelings or whatever, that and you have some payoffs, including the eclipse cycle counts as payoffs. The uncommons in this set are very strong, the ones that kind of pay you for being the right creature type if you do meet their conditions. So as you open your pool, I would definitely keep in mind, I think a lot of the pools in the set are very easy, but some of them are more like a traditional sealed deck that are going to be three, maybe four colors. The fixing in this set is maybe worse than usual. There's no common tap lands, but there are some just some better colorless fixers than I think there normally are in other sets.
Yeah, and then there's some pretty good like five color, so to speak, fixing in green.
Yep. And kind
Where
of
which
red.
Yeah, and red treasures and whatnot. So that kind of incentivizes you to play splash multiple things, maybe even.
Yeah, and
I
on
I
top of
will
that, or God.
I I was just gonna say. Well, why don't you go ahead with the fixing part still?
Well, on top of the incentive to splash, there's just a lot of powerful rares and mythics in this set, more than the usual, I think.
Okay, sort of, kind of like Avatar, then, huh? Because boy, that set had a lot.
Yeah,
I was gonna say about this set that uh, the thing with the the Kithkin, the Merfolk, the typal things, they're less so impactful than I thought they were going to be, for whatever that's worth. You can definitely get decks that are sort of like amalgamations of the two, or just mid-range decks, and I think those can be totally fine. I think this is true. This has happened to me the most so far when I'm drafting in elementals, because their theme isn't quite as strong. There's more splashing around, but it's happened to me a little bit in like green black too. So I imagine sealed is going to be more of that, especially if you're not getting an entire deck full of elves. But
yeah, it depends on the payoff
sort
you
of,
get too. Like my first pre-release event, I had Champion of the Weird, which really it doesn't reward you for playing a ton of goblins, but it rewards you for playing enough goblins to have something to behold, and also then like high toughness creatures from there. And I just ended up with like a decent amount of goblins and something I'd kind of consider a goblin deck, and I just played straight black red.
yeah, makes sense. Okay, so looking at white here, most of these cards we're on Scryfall and we're sorted by set review, so we're looking at by mana cost. So some of these cheaper spells, they're not exactly the splashable types, but are there any that are particularly powerful?
I wouldn't ignore Bark of Doran. I mean, it's probably a little easier to pull off in draft, but that equipment can give a lot of stats, which can be kind of valuable. I think it's kind of mostly shows up in Merfolk, where they're kind of aggressive, and also they specifically have the 1/3 vigilance that can become unblockable, so that's like a huge combo. Um, I
I
don't think
think
I'd be in the market to skip splash keep out either.
moving on to some of the 2 mana cards, you're starting to get into some of the rares. These white rares, like these 2 drops, are you particularly excited about these? I'm thinking of Kinscare Sentry, Reese the Evermore. They're not super amazing in draft. I don't think they'd be super great in
It's
sealed
just
either.
like kind of a cool combat trick that leaves a body around, but not really splashable. The Sentry has impressed me, but it's not like a bomb or anything. It's certainly way more powerful on turn 2.
What about Personify? This is the 1 and a white instant exile a creature. Well, you blink a creature you control, and then you create a 1/1 color shapeshifter. This has been okay in draft. I would think in sealed it might be a bit better.
Yeah, there might be more auras around in sealed because people might be splashing them. Like the spiral in the Solitude card is more in the territory of removal. Someone might splash, so you might have more time to cast this card. And yeah, you might be focusing more on your 2-for-1s, your creatures with ETBs. So it's pretty nice. Yeah, I think nothing that noteworthy here makes sense. In sealed, the cheaper cards are going to dictate what colors you play based on quantity more so than quality.
Yeah, you're sort of just going to play whatever you can get for the 2 mana cards. I mean, the idea with mostly your 2 mana cards, you want them to do something into the late game. So, like something like Timid Shieldbearer is a pretty good example of a common you're happy to play. That's the 2 mana 2/2 where you can pay 5 to punch 3 creatures. Wonderbind Preacher maybe less so because it's just a 2 mana 2/2. Of course, it can, if you have some tap synergies, it'll definitely get over the line. I think because into the late game, gaining 2 life often can be good. But you don't want anything that's too vanilla and pump spells, that sort of thing. You don't want. We do get into some nice rares at 3. I think these are probably getting to the point where they're powerful enough that you would really want to consider them if you open them.
Yeah, I mean certainly Ajani and Brigid. The Adept Water Shaper is a fine card. I guess I'll say also, I think 5 is a key amount of toughness in this format. There's a lot of things that can handle 4 toughness creatures, but not 5. So not that it makes a 3 mana 3/4 and a great ability on Adept Water Shaper a bad card by any means, but I'm not viewing it as like a total bomb. It's kind of just like a role player for your Convoke aggro deck. Anyways.
Yeah, I believe that. there are tons of red that deal. I mean, in general, the creatures in this form are kind of small, and I've actually been impressed with some of the creatures that are just big stats. Some of the green guys that I
Yeah,
didn't think would be
we'll
good.
get into it later, but the Korath Zealot, the 6/5 elemental, is a card that I think was really underdrafted early on, and I think people are catching on.
Here's a question. It will sort of apply to all of these flip creatures in each color. If you were, say, Brigade and you were blue white, and you figured you'd play Brigade because it's a 3 mana 3/2, would you add green in some capacity to your deck to be able to play flip
I
it?
might I might look to be able to do that, yeah. And alternatively, if I am already a green deck, I'd probably look to splash Brigid too. They're just, I mean, Brigid's really strong. These flip cards are a little deceptive on how strong they are because they can keep accruing value turn after turn by flipping them back and forth at the very least. So as the game kind of stalls out, they offer, even in a long game, kind of a nice tool. But Brigid, if you're both white and green, is also like exceptionally strong on curve. It's a lot of power and toughness, and it can ramp you up a lot of mana. Ajani, not really splashable, but I think is also kind of, that's more of a bomb level card to me. Like, I think a lot of games of limited, if you have Ajani on turn 3, it can almost solo the game. And we talked about it in our top 10 list last week for constructed. But in limited, it's just like there's not really any answers to that play pattern where he just ticks up and makes 1/1s, and your opponent has to just attack into it, and you have the option to let him take it or chump block, and then you have the -2 available to kill one of the creatures that attacked him. So really strong.
Yeah, no surprises there, I would think. What about a Johnny at home? We've got Klaken Festival, the uncommon, comes into play. You create 2 1/1 Kithkins, and you can pay 5 to create a Kithkin. Have you liked this card?
It's a little better in sealed than draft, but it's not that impressive to me.
Yeah, 5 mana is just so much.
Yeah, the activated ability is not really why you'd want to play this card, I guess I'll say. But I think getting 2 Kithkin bodies and a Kithkin enchantment is sometimes something you're in the market for. If you have Brigid, it's also a little better because that's kind of actually a mana sink engine.
Makes sense. This card here that I'm looking at, Crib Swap, this is a big question. I think this is a card that this type of effect certainly is really appealing to a lot of players, and it often plays worse than it looks. Where are you at with Crib Swap in particular?
I do like to play it. It's a little bit more interesting to me if I have cards that care about creature types in my graveyard, or the Eclipse cycle can dig and find this as removal. As just a straight up removal spell, it is kind of bad to give them a 1/1 changeling. That's definitely true. But it can answer the bombs, and you'd rather, them have a 1/1 changeling than the bombs. In an ideal world, I'd rather just have, like Pyrrhic Strike down there or something to answer the bombs. But it being a changeling is why you'd play this, I think.
Okay. Necessary evil kind of thing. I do agree that it'll get better in seal, especially if you don't have options. Right? If you have a pool where you're definitely going to play white and you don't have very much removal, you sort of have to play a card like this, even though you're not happy about it. And some of the time it'll fail you, but some of the time it'll work also, so that's important. A lot of these other cards, like the 3 mana slot, there's nothing here that's super appealing to me in white.
Yeah, Pyrrhic Strike is really strong. It can easily be a 2-for-1 in this format, I think. So I'd be pretty willing to splash it. And then I like changelings in this format a lot too. Flock Imposter, maybe not splashable, but I think you're just going to play a lot of your 2-for-1 creatures, and this can count as another 2-for-1 creature that happens to be a changeling. The Moonlit Lamenter, if you can blight onto it, is also a lot of value. So these are some pretty solid cards, I think, at uncommon that we see here.
Okay, and the removal spell, Protective Response.
Yeah, totally fine.
Yeah, Appeal to Iridu. I mean, combat tricks aren't too great in sealed in general. We've got another rare here as we move on to the 4s. Champion of the Klaken. I'm assuming you probably like all the champions. They're just super strong on rate, but how often do you play them if you don't have a full Kithkin deck, etc.?
This one's a lot worse because what it says is other Kithkin you control get +1/+1. I mean, it's a 4/5 flash, but I think you really want to care that you're pumping your board with this. So it cares a lot more about being a lot of Kithkin than the other ones, whereas the other ones, you can almost think about them as like splashing. Where I had a draft deck this week where I played Champion of the Weird, the black one, and I had 6 changelings in my deck to behold to it. I wasn't even playing a single actual goblin, and it was an excellent card because the ability on it is kind of absurd, especially if you play a lot of high toughness creatures. But this card, I just don't think I'd ever do that with. I'd want to be a dedicated Kithkin deck.
Yeah, or at least have, a ton of changelings plus some Kithkin or something.
Oh
I mean,
yeah, I would count the
format of four
changelings
flag
as
clash would be
being
good.
correct. Like they're Kithkin. Like the changelings count as all of them or whatever. Like for the purposes of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, totally. But like if you weren't a Kithkin deck, but you had a lot of changelings and maybe a couple Kithkin, I can still see playing champion of the
Yeah, I'd want
Klecken.
closer to like 10 creatures in my deck that this works with. I think something like that.
Makes sense. Liminal Hold, good removal spot for
Yep. The Thought Weft
Geek.
Viewer is one I think worth talking about. Sorry, it was down there. The Kithkin. Um, this format has a lot of board stalls, I guess is what I'll say. And you need plans to kind of break through the board stalls. And this card is excellent, in my opinion. I think the data on it is really good. People are surprised about that. But since day one, drafting early, I'll say this card is just overperformed. You don't need to. I think you need less Kithkin in your deck for this card to be good than the champion. If this card is giving +1/+1 by itself, that's not good enough. But like when it's giving +2, +3, stuff like that, that's it's totally serviceable to just make your opponent kind of do something about it. And it's a 0/5, so it's that key, like it's hard to kill, kind of key toughness point. You can blight onto it a bunch if you want. There's just a lot of cool stuff to do with this.
Yeah, this card is also overperformed for me, even though it didn't look super great when I first read it. But the board stalls, that sort of matters. Your Kithkin kind of go wide and can have trouble getting through big blockers, so this helps with that too. Similarly, even like this common Shore Lurker format 3/3 Flying Wind Enter Surveil 1 has been kind of okay for me, even though it's a rate that doesn't look like it'd be great in a lot of other formats.
What I'll say about the Imbuer is I played Two-Headed Giant with Olivia, and I made sure and asked. So attacking alone in Two-Headed Giant means that only you attack with one creature, not even your teammate can't even attack in order to attack alone. And I still thought it was correct to build our decks in such a way that I had two of these Imbuers and a Bridget's Command to clone it, and ultimately won the game mostly because of my Imbuers. In a like just attacking alone, giving such an absurd buff was just and I was a bit more of a changeling Kithkin deck, so it was much larger, but still.
Nice. So yeah, good card. Only one white also. This Mythic, Morning Time's Light, can you do anything with this?
You can make it so you exile all your opponent's creatures and attack them for lethal, but I might not really play this. It has a lot of weird flexibilities that I think are all a little too narrow, but if you do have a deck that you believe is like really creature heavy and it's really good, like I think Merfolk decks sometimes qualify here where they gum up the ground really well and they go really wide and they get a lot of creatures in play and they have a lot of card draw and value, but then they just like have no way to convert it into lethal. I would literally think about this as like your opponent's creatures can't block this turn. It's like kind of the plan A.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. I haven't seen anyone play this card. I haven't opened it. It seems like maybe you could put together enough stuff. Like if you have a lot of ETBs in your deck, you might just like you can kill a token, get an ETB, make things not block. I'm really not sure about it. That's why I asked. But
Yeah, I mean, like I said, more often than not, I think you shouldn't play this in sealed, but you might have a pool where it makes sense. I think it's most likely going to be Merfolk or Kithkin, kind of more aggressive.
Iridu as another mythic. I will say this mythic, it's big and splashy. I think it looks more powerful than it is. It's not a bad card, but I think like almost all the value of it is just that it's a 5-mana 5/5 flying lifelink.
I disagree, having had it once in draft.
Okay, tell me about it.
I mean, so if you only have white mana, that's true, but the black side is completely absurd. Like other non-token creatures you control have persist. Your opponent just cannot attack you if this is flipped on the other side, and they probably can't block a lot of your things either. Like, my opponent randomly was trying to attack me, probably with something like the Thought Weft Imbuer or maybe Glister Baron, to like try to race my 5/5 flying lifelink, and I just like chump blocked with Eclipsed Kithkin. Even though it dies on the persist, I get like another ETB, stuff like that. There's just like a ton of ETBs. You can double block pretty safely, just things like that. Like I just think giving persist part of the card is like if you thought you had any hope of like racing a Baneslayer Angel, maybe because you have this super wide board. If your opponent controls other creatures and has this flipped, then that hope is just completely gone.
So let's say you open a blue-white pool and you have this card and you're going to play it, obviously, and you're just, no fixing. You're going to play 9/8 Island Plains. Would you maybe go 8/8 and put a swamp in your deck for this, something like that?
Maybe exactly that, but it's kind of tough with some of the mana costs, because this is white to begin with. So
Okay. So maybe, yeah. I mean, if the backside is real good, I could see
yeah,
doing
I
it.
would probably play the swamp, just one.
Kin binding, definitely a bomb in a white deck, right?
Yeah, a little bit better as an aggressive deck than a defensive deck, but still, eventually those 1/1s can add up. Definitely a bomb. Um, I would play it in every white pool. It would be a big draw to white, even if you are more defensively slanted. I'm sure this will still take over and overcome the game. Um, I've played some black red decks in draft that I think were built, mostly off commons and a few uncommons or whatever that were kind of grindy. Lots of card draw, 2-for-1s, and removal. And a card like this is a nightmare. It's a bomb that my removal doesn't work against.
Yeah, totally. It's kind of the perfect sealed card. I mean, and obviously excellent in draft too. Uh, Lumbering Walker, really good rare at 4/7. You can do things with the -1/-1 counters in this format. Also, it doesn't have any of the kindred types. Pretty strong card. It doesn't. I wouldn't say this is quite the bomb because returning this power 2 or less is actually a pretty big restriction on it, but it's still a good card.
Yeah, I mean the power 2 or less. Sometimes it gets like Graveshifter or something. There's certainly some really powerful cards that you can get. Some of the Eclipse cards. I think it's also like not something you really see coming because it's a rare. So sometimes your opponent just attacks with like their Eclipse Marrow, and you're like, sure, they have a trick, whatever. I'll block. We'll see what trick it is. It's no trick. Then they play this. They get the Eclipse Marrow back. Stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. So definitely a good card. I mean, I'm definitely seeing what you're saying that most all the rares are pretty good. Although we're looking at this one. This is another weird one. You're gonna have to explain to me if it's good. This Winnowing card. This is the one that with Convoke and you like punish your opponent if they have a creature of the different type because you select that and then they sack everything else. It's kind of a weird card.
Yeah, it's one I've had a lot of discussion about. It's either completely broken or completely terrible with not much in between.
Mm-hmm.
If you pick your own changeling, then you'll not have to pick something. If your opponent has any changelings, they're not going to die no matter what. If your opponent is just playing a deck of all the same creature type, this card doesn't do anything. But sometimes your opponent plays like a random fairy and they have no changelings, and you pick their fairy and you wrap their whole board minus their one random fairy. And you pick a changeling or something on your side. So
do you play it?
I think I would play it, but be willing to side it out because I think the upside's really high. But I guess you have to be playing either a lot of changelings or a lot of the same creature type to be clear. I wouldn't just play it if you can't really make it good for yourself.
Right. So if you have a pretty good Kindred deck,
It doesn't have to be a full-on kindred deck. If you have a lot of changelings, then as long as you pick a changeling for yourself, all your creatures will live. So,
okay, good point. Yeah, this never kills changelings. Okay.
and if you pick a changeling, yeah, then it shares a type with the rest of your board, so it works.
Yeah, totally. Then yeah, the final white cards here: Curious Colossus, Bomb at Mythic Rare.
Yeah, I'm glad I haven't had to
mana,
face this card yet, but I've seen it watching some other drafts, and it's completely absurd.
Yeah, it's essentially a one-sided Wrath. I mean, it's answerable by a removal spell, but other than that, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, Kithkeeper, I love splashing, and also in some decks. I had this conversation with people at pre-release, and they were talking about like, well, what if I only get like 3 tokens or whatever? And like, I guess I can understand the sentiment that like 7 mana for a 3/3 and 3/1/1s, and this ability to kind of close and get flying. It attacks for a lot when this happens, to be fair. But like, I get that maybe that doesn't feel like it's worth spending 7 mana for. But it's sealed. Spending 7 mana on a card that you think is worth 6 mana is still like a very big play in a game, you know? Like I wouldn't ignore that this is going to be one of the better spells cast in a game, especially at non-rare, basically.
Yeah, and its ability is actually quite good in this format, right? It's kind of slower, board stalls,
Yeah,
flyers are good. There's no limit to how many expensive cards you can play unless you have a lot of ramp or something. But
definitely. No, I've played this a lot
gonna be one
in
of
this
your better
format.
ones.
You can, what happens often too is you find these windows to attack for 6, but then all of a sudden your opponent's at 12 or something, and you realize you have enough board to just get it to 12 in one turn and one-shot them, stuff like that.
Moving on to blue, we've got Flittering Nuisance as a rare. That's a pretty appealing one, right? Even though it's 1 mana.
Yeah, no, I mean, gets to the board fast. It's really good to blight onto after you've used it, of course. but I've been on the receiving end of this plus Cinder Strikes a lot, stuff like that, or Bog Slither's Embrace, or the pacifism. They just maybe even only activate it to draw one card off its own combat, but then later in the game they blight onto it and they keep getting some cards out of it. But in the end, it was just like a 1-mana 1/1 flying that scales really well into the game. So I think that's really good.
Spell Snare, pretty low impact. You're mostly not going to want to play, even though it's obviously great and constructed.
Yeah.
Blossom Bind is a surprisingly good removal spell for blue at common.
Yeah, I agree. It's one that's hard to test out. I think in sealed it might end up playing a little worse than in draft because people are more likely for the games to go long and them to maybe have their weird answers to it. But it's pretty effective. The fact that they can't blight onto the creature is a pretty big deal. The fact that it can't become untapped, not just that it doesn't untap during the untap step, also a big deal because some random tricks or whatever untap creatures, things like that, those don't work. It's pretty good. You can count it as just solid removal. I wouldn't be that worried about playing them. I would just count it kind of straight up as a removal spell. Yeah.
What else are you drawn to here in blue?
Yeah, I mean Lockmare is completely absurd. Same thing, blighting onto it. I had this in a draft deck recently in a red-blue deck, and I had a couple of the Gluttons, the 1/3s that blight 1 to Rummage. And if I had this in play with one of those, I almost didn't need to draw spells to win the game. I could just keep rummaging and getting counters on this and either draw extra cards or just stun my opponent's thing while controlling a 4/5.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, this is a bad horse. He's good. You can play him real late. You can top deck him real late in the game, and he's good too. And there's a surprising amount of blight in a lot of the colors, so you'll often find ways to use his tap ability or draw cards ability again. So yeah, definitely sometimes when rares are at the 2-drop slot, they're kind of like good on curve but low impact late into the game. This is just total bomb all the way through.
Blue only has one blight card, it's the cancel, and green has no blight cards. Black and red have a ton and white has a few, just as a reference.
Run away together. Most people don't put this in their draft decks in this format.
Yeah, I'm not that excited to try
to it in sealed. No, okay.
The Noggle the Mind card I just wanted to point out, I think is also kind of playable. I'm not as excited to play as Blossom Bind, but I think this having flash means it's surprisingly just a combat trick that always works a lot of the time. The lose all abilities means the creature there's no +1/+1 counters in this set generally, so it's also not as hard for them to abuse a random 1/1 in play. And if you play it on a creature that's already blighted, it'll die. And lastly, if you are playing with Winnowing, the card we discussed above, this is quite the combo with Winnowing because you can end of turn cast this and then pick that with Winnowing or something, and it'll always work.
Nice.
I guess unless they have some Noggles. Yeah, they could have. I guess it still doesn't kill Changelings. What am I saying? It doesn't lose all creature types. Okay. I kind of changed my mind, actually. I thought this helped you kill the Changelings, but I'm wrong.
No, it should, because it says it loses all abilities, and I think Changeling only works because of its ability, right?
No, okay. First of all, that's a funny topic. It's about layers. It losing all abilities will make it lose Changeling, but not all of its creatures. All of its creature types. But then the part where it says it becomes a Noggle means that it'll only be a Noggle. So yes, it will only be a Noggle. What I meant to say more so is, let's say your opponent controls 3 Changelings, and you cast this. These have 3 Noggles, no matter what, right? So they're still going to keep all their other Changelings, even if you pick the Noggle the Minded thing with Winnowing, is what I was trying to say.
Gotcha. Okay. But if they were to have one Changeling,
you could enchant that one Changeling and then Winnowing that, and and then unless they happen to have the one other Noggle in this set, you're good.
Yeah, and this card, unlike Blossom Bind, it shuts down a wider variety of rares, so I think you're always going to play this. Yeah, some other good 2-drops here. Sig, Wonder-Wine Wisdom, pretty good rare.
Sig is a really absurd, much more splash-worthy type of card to me than Bridget.
Yeah?
Yeah. And then obviously just the blue half alone is also pretty good, but the flip back and forth is kind of crazy. I mean, it gives protection from all colors until your next turn. Meaning you could block with that thing. If your opponent ever has any auras on your creatures, you can target the things with the auras on them and they fall off. It's just going to flip back and forth and kind of completely win the game, I think.
Okay, yeah, I could believe that. Funny enough, it even if you couldn't flip it too, it's actually pretty good. I mean, they're all kind of like that. I guess.
Definitely.
Do you like cancel and sealed, wild unraveling? It's got some blight synergies.
Not that much. It's fine. It's about as good as cancel and other sealed sometimes, but
Yeah, I mean cancel's pretty bad and sealed, I think. The blight too, like maybe if you had a lot of synergies with it, could do something. But other
this
than
has
that,
to be like the third time I've read this card and gotten surprised that it's Blight 2 instead of Blight 1.
funny. I'm surprised a little bit by how bad it is. You like
Yeah,
puffed
that's
up
what I
Blight
mean.
2
Like,
just to make it one less.
yeah, I would just think it could be Blight 1.
Yeah, makes sense. Um, is Glenalinger Guardian a premium card?
I wouldn't splash for it. A lot of the strength of this card is the 2/3 flash flying, so I think there's a lot of 2/2s and such in this format, so I think you're really likely to like force a good block on an attacking small creature early in the game, like when you have this on turn 3.
Okay. So it's not a great splash card if you don't have it red on turn 3, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've got a second Planeswalker here. Johnny was really good, and Oko Lorwyn Liege, a little harder to parse. How's this one?
Yeah, also very good. I guess I'll say for reference, this was 2 at a giant, so I had the fixing and more rares, but I played like a black, green, white deck with splashing blue for Sig in this. Um, and it was quite good for me. It was kind of surprising. I actually think there's a couple play patterns I've seen with this where like you stick it and you flip it and you make 2 elks and then maybe you flip it again and then you flip it back and you make 2 elks again and maybe it's dead. But you got 4 elks out of your cards, so that's pretty strong. But also just like plussing it, and the ult's really fast. It can ult in 2 turns after you play it. I played a Kith Keeper the turn that I ulted it and named Kithkin, and already had a few other Kithkin in play. But, you know, I think it's also not uncommon to just like play this on turn 3 and plus it twice and then flip it and ult it, which is pretty good.
Yeah, makes sense. So it's really good. I guess you can't really play it if you're just blue. You do have to be blue green, although you could splash the green for sure. But
You definitely need to be
this
able to
down
flip
and
it.
plus it.
Yeah. It's definitely both colors pretty solidly. And yeah, I mean, the emblem, if you don't know, is choose a creature type, and creatures you control of that type get +3/+3 vigilance and hexproof. And I'll say that 2 creatures is plenty for +3/+3 vigilance and hexproof. You probably can win the game with those 2. 1 might be enough, but yeah.
Yeah. And it gives you 2 elks too, so you're probably gonna have plenty of creatures.
Well,
Yeah,
the
I mean,
+2 is a permanent changing of type. Like it permanently makes something into a changeling. So you could just play this and next turn play a guy, like play it +1 on their thing so it doesn't get attacked. Next turn play to the board a little and plus this on your best guy, and then just name your best creature type plus your best guy next turn.
nice. It's funny because it's at Mythic, but this actually looks like a really fun card to play with in Limited and not as much in Constructed because you get to use kind of everything the card is designed for.
Yeah, it's been seeing play in Constructed too. Some main deck and sideboard play. It seems like it does a good job of a classic kind of Planeswalker thing against decks that don't pressure Planeswalkers very well, and it's pretty cheap. Plus, you know, Simic and Badger Mole Cub decks are all playing these colors, so it fits in.
Makes sense. We have a very good Mana War effect in this format at Uncommon. Recluse, it's an elemental 2 and a blue 3/2, and you return a creature to its owner's hand. Would you splash this?
It's kind of in that realm, yeah. It's funny that it's worse than the last Mana War we had somehow, even though this one's very good. The Submersible in Avatar was completely broken and could hit clues and such. But yeah, this card, I think it's pretty good. I'm glad it doesn't say opponent controls. I think you'll bounce your own stuff with ETBs a fair amount or free yourself from auras, stuff like that. So there's still a lot of usefulness. I think because there's so many ETBs in this set, comically, it might feel a little worse as on certain boards from your opponent's side of the board, or like looking at things you could target on your opponent's side of the board, but on your side of the board, plus there's a lot of tokens. So it's just good. Yeah.
Silvergill Peddler. This is just a common, so you might not feel a huge draw towards it, but I think in Sealed this is going to be a pretty nice card, especially if you have other synergies to tap it. This is the 3-mana 2/3 that when it becomes tapped, you loot. Effects like this are really powerful in Sealed.
Yeah, if you can tap it, I agree. That might be kind of harder than it looks, though.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get to draft around it, right? You just have to open something that taps it, but that can be really good. Thirst for Identity, it's okay.
Kind of worse than the common we'll get to later in blue.
Yeah, the Merfolk champion is one that I'm sure you'd be happy with your sort of splash idea, right? It's so powerful for.
Yeah, exactly. Like all I care about is my ability to behold a merfolk to this, and not how many merfolk I have on the board. You know, it doesn't care about merfolk on the board at all. It's just a frost titan for 4.
Yeah, so you can almost just combo this. If you probably have, honestly, if you just had 4 changelings or some
Yeah,
combination of
yeah. I'd
changelings and
probably
merfolk.
start thinking about 5 things, and it depends on what they are too. You know, for example, so I've splashed Champion of the Weird twice in draft this week, I'll say, and one of them was 6 changelings, and the other one was a mix of changelings and goblins, and I think it was 7. But it's 8 if I counted Sinar, the broken rare. But I'm like, I'm not going to count my broken goblin rare as something I want to behold to this because I would just like never make that play. You know?
Right. Well, if it's in your hand, I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair.
Is Glenalendra's answer playable? We don't like cancel, but this is like a 4 mana 1/1 basically that counters a spell.
No, I don't think so. I
Okay.
wouldn't. Yeah, I'd rather have cancel. I think.
Fair enough. Pestered Wellguard. This is kind of underperformed for me. I don't know. Do you like this card?
No, I don't think we really need to talk about any of these. Disruptor is a fine card, but it's not anything that bomby either. It's good when you can
just
invoke it,
some
most
like
likely. Yeah.
some okay rate blue cards.
Yeah. The Omni Changeling, I mean, once again, being Changeling is good, but that card is really good. If I probably have talked about this before, but clone effects in Limited are usually quite good if they can clone any creature on the battlefield, and much worse if they can only clone your own. And this one can clone any creature in play, which means it's like bar for competing with the board is typically totally fine because it's just going to be the best creature in play every time you cast it. And especially because it has Convoke, it's not even that weird to just like be happy to convoke this out and spend hardly any mana on it and get some like cute little value creature like an Eclipsed thing that you have, or maybe your opponent has a matching one for your deck or things like that.
Yeah, this card is, I mean, Convoke is really nice. This is essentially a lot cheaper than 5 mana, and clones are pretty good at just 4 mana. So this is very nice. Do you play these like there's a basic land cycler in blue and red? This blue one is called Stratosaur, the 5 mana 3/5 fine. Do you play these cards?
I don't really like the Stratosaur that much, so no, I don't think the 5 mana half of it is that worthwhile. I will say it does compete with the skies pretty effectively in this format. The flyers are very small. Almost all of them are actually 3/3 or smaller, so a 3/5 is pretty good at doing that, but it is still a little overcosted, I feel like, for what it is. And I don't really want to spend 2 mana on fixing, though, you know, when I'm counting up my sources or whatever, and depends on what powerful things I'm fixing, I'm certainly more willing to, you know, splash really absurd cards with this type of thing as fixing.
Makes sense. A lot of the top end of blue here. There's a couple bombs in Sunderflock, and well, what would you consider Mirror Form? Is this a bomb? What is this?
Yeah, I think you want some token type things. My whole PT Discord had to discover, like, I talked about this like on day 1 of our drafts because people were passing it around, and I thought some of the people's kind of blue-white decks especially would have really liked this card. And then over the course of the week, I heard people call back to my mention of it and then go, "Oh, I didn't know it lasted forever." "Oh, I didn't know it was instant." It's just like, yeah,
Didn't know I could copy my opponent's creature.
yeah, you can cast it end of turn on your opponent's 4/4 and have 7 4/4s or something going into your turn, or you can just attack with all your creatures, and when they make all their blocks, just target the largest thing in play, and your thing is your whole board or those things. Like it's pretty effective if you control a lot of creatures, and that's about as simple as it is to me. It's just going to be good if you have a lot of creatures.
Yeah, so I agree. I think it's a really strong card. If your opponent ever plays a crazy rare, too, you might just have lots of that crazy rare, and it would be good.
Yeah, it doesn't work with legends though. Keep that in mind. But
yeah, true. Some of this other stuff, I mean, yeah, Sunderflock, kind of a total bomb too. If you have elementals or changelings to make it cheaper, that's ideal, because I guess you're not going to want to spend 9 mana, but pretty much any changeling to make this just a little bit cheaper brings it into the playable territory, I would say.
yeah, I agree. I mean, once you get to spending like 6 mana on this, it's going to be pretty absurd. Yeah, definitely agree. I guess also the mirror form, you don't need creatures, you just need non-land permanents, now that I say that. And I believe, like, for example, if you have Liminal Hold, it's still going to keep their thing exiled and turn into the other thing, because that's a condition of when it entered. If you have any auras, they'll fall off, because creatures can't be attached to other creatures. But, also your Blossom Binds, you're in blue, for example. Maybe you have 2 Blossom Binds in play and you play this end of turn. Now your Blossom Binds, they don't work as Blossom Bind anymore, but they are the creature you targeted.
Yeah, probably better that way anyways. Is this a good format for card drawing? There's some like expensive card drawing spells.
Yeah, I like these cards a lot. I actually think Harmonized Crescendo is probably the worst of these 3 you have on your screen here. I mean, it can be very good and sometimes draw a lot of cards, but the Unexpected Assistance I've really liked. I think it's very strong. And Shine Striker, I think, 3/3 flying is pretty good to play to the board anyways. And if you draw 2 cards off this, it's totally fine. But sometimes you get like 4 or 5 cards off of it, and it's really broken.
Yeah, and also being a creature, you could potentially blink it, get it back from your graveyard, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I've played this and Omni Changeling in the same turn, I think, a couple times.
Mm-hmm. So moving into black, interestingly, there's multiple rares at 1 mana here. Do you like these rares? Do they do enough?
I love the Dawnhand Dissident. I would splash the Dawnhand Dissident. I would not pay attention to the fact that it costs 1 very much. It will solo the game, I think. You need to care about having some 3 toughness creatures in your deck to blight 2 onto. What often happens is this blights onto itself to surveil 1, and then whenever you have a creature in your graveyard, you just blight 2 onto one of your 3 toughness creatures, exile it from your graveyard, and cast it from your graveyard. This card is really close to just being able to cast a creature from your graveyard at will in the course of a long game. So, if you splash this and you cast it on turn 6, it's still going to do that. It doesn't really matter that much that you play it on turn 1.
Yeah, it's basically a Lightning Rod, which is super good for 1 mana. And then Moonshadow. Is Moonshadow a good card?
I wouldn't splash it, but I have a feeling you should probably almost always play it in your black decks. You don't have to remove many counters from it to be good for 1 mana to begin with. This is more like the type of thing that you want to have on turn 1. But there's random things, if you mill cards, it can only at max remove 1 counter, but you'll probably remove a counter, stuff like that. I guess the Elf synergy cares a lot about self-mill, so that adds up. The Glistle Glutton, the Rummaging guy, or any Rummaging in general, when you discard lands to draw a card, this removes a counter, stuff like that. When you trade off other things in combat, it removes a counter. So, pretty cool.
Makes sense. Let's see. What are some other cards? Oh, this card's been decent in draft, and I imagine it gets even better in sealed. I'm pretty attracted to this card. This is Auntie's Sentence. That's you can look at your opponent's hand, choose an online permanent, discard it, or give a creature -2/-2.
Yeah, I guess I haven't seen this come up that much. I think the -2/-2 might be a little too weak to really care. And a lot of the bombs in this set might not be non-land permanents as we get into multicolor, like the commands. So I'm not sure if I really would care that much to play this. But just like, I don't know. What I think also matters in this set is I think the decks are going to have more creatures than usual. Like, if I had to guess, a lot of sets, you're looking to play like 16 creatures and 17 non-creature spells in your 23 spells. And like, this set with all of the kind of synergy for controlling creatures, I think it's closer to like 18 and 5. So I'm just like really picky about my non-creature spells in my deck a lot of the time. And I just want like my non-creature spells to be like really bomby or just removal that answers everything.
I hear that. I mean, in some sense, this means that it's gonna, have more choices to discard from your opponent's hand if they also have a deck full of creatures.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess there will also come a point, though, I think that you could top deck this and it does pretty much nothing. It doesn't impact the board well enough, and they have no hand.
Okay. Well, we'll have to see how it plays out. I think I'm probably a little bit higher on it than you going in, but we'll reevaluate sometime down the line. Bitterbloom Bear, certainly a good card, but black is tough. You're not really going to be splashing it, so if you're in black, you could probably go ahead and play it.
Yeah, definitely play it. I mean, it's really threatening. A lot of removal spells here, pretty good. The Bogslith Embrace, splashable. Blight Rot, a little less splashable. Nameless Inversion, maybe splashable, kind of for the same reason I pointed out at Crib Swap earlier. Being a changeling is huge. Finding it. There's a lot of elves you'll notice in black that care about having an elf in your graveyard, and Nameless Inversion is an elf in your graveyard right after you cast it. So, stuff like that.
I've really liked Unbury in the elf deck.
Me too. I've liked it in, most decks.
And, other decks too as well. Bogart Mischief is kind of a bomb in goblins, but I suppose you're not really splashing it. So that might be
Yeah,
harder to work
so
with sealed.
if you've looked at the stats, you might notice Goblins is clearly the worst performing guild, and I kind of like the colors of red and black in the set, but I don't care that much about doing this type of Goblin thing where my Goblins die. So I've actually been pretty unimpressed with the set. I don't feel like the Goblins in the set. I don't feel like it's supported enough to kind of do this thing. This card is really annoying when you're like aggressive and they just like have to take damage from their things, and also the Signpost uncommon that does damage when your goblins dies is just a 2-mana 2/3 death touch, so that's just a good card, you know. But this card, I think you really have to be doing the goblin thing, and it's just like it wouldn't be a huge draw to me. But if my deck's already a bunch of goblins, then yeah, I'm going to be happy with.
Let's see. Any other black cards you want to shout out here?
Yeah, I mean all these flip legends are pretty good. Grub, pretty good. You definitely want to be both sides. If you notice on the back side, the when it attacks, you may blight one. If you do, create a tapped and attacking token of target blight of that blighted creature. It does not have to be a goblin on the other side. You can play. I've had people play Prisma Basher and attack and get a copy of Prisma Basher and just kill their opponent, stuff like that. I think when you play this card, what happens much is obviously it's a 2/1 menace, so you can get some attacks in, but it's hard to get multiple attacks off with this and have it live in your average game. But you might get like if you have Nameless Inversion or Crib Swap, those are great with this. You just flip it back and forth and keep getting goblins from your graveyard to your hand generally. And then at some point you'll have lethal on like the red side and attack and copy something that with a great ETB that also happens to attack and stuff like that.
Yeah. And then as far as the first ability goes, I mean, it only gets goblins, but there are a lot of good shapeshifters in this format, so you'll find things to get back, especially if you're thinking about it when you're building. Gnarlbark Elm is an interesting card. It has a high upside. It comes down as a 3-mana 1/2, so they have an opportunity to kill it, but if they don't, you could potentially kill another small creature.
Yeah, I mean, I've liked this card, but I'm not like in love with it. It's -2/-2, kind of the same as the other card, is not killing a lot of the stuff I care about in this format, but it is a 2-for-1, so worth pointing at.
Is there anything you can do with Twilight Diviner in this format? I haven't seen people do much with it the couple times it's been in play.
Yeah, the black-white hybrid tree that we'll get to later, Reaping Willow. You can't return this and get a copy, but you can return other things and get a copy. I've done that. There's a few other things in this set, but that one's one of the stronger cards. I love this Taster of Wares card. I would say you could maybe even splash it, especially if you have a lot of changelings in your deck. But if you're used to playing like, you know, Corrupt Court Official in the last set or whatever, this card's like a 3-mana 3/2 that makes your opponent discard a card at its floor.
Which is already much better.
Which is already much better because a 3/2 is just a real card that's going to trade and play with things, and then you could also like bring it back from, you know, great with Grub. But as the number scales, you get to pick something from their hand. You're more likely to get an instant or sorcery. It's not that weird for your opponent's last card in hand to be like a removal spell. So sometimes you play this and get their last card and it's a removal spell, and then you kill one of their guys, even in a deck with no goblins. And then obviously in a deck with more goblins, you're way more likely to hit like removal spells off this, and that's just like a 3-for-1 in a sense because they don't have a removal spell and you do, and yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, very nice card. We've also got the Black Champion here, Champion of the Weird. Is this also a champion you're willing to do that sort of splash thing with?
This is the best one to do that.
Okay, I guess so.
It's a Plague Wind. It being a 5/5 means it blights 4 onto itself without dying even, to like give your opponent blight 4. And obviously you want to set your deck up well with this and play you know, things with 3 toughness especially. But you know, I've blighted this. It can blight itself to death too and get 6 blight just out of itself. It's a crazy card, and I just think, yeah, I've had this in between sealed and draft like 3 or 4 times now, and it's completely game.
Nice. Okay, yeah. I mean, even the fact that it's a 5/5 and it can blight onto itself, it's going to get you a pretty long way.
I'm not sure I've ever passed the turn with this being a 5/5. Is what I'll say. It's almost always a 1/1. Because the thing is, when you blight onto itself first, I know it's a little bit more vulnerable, but like what ends up happening is you like play this, and turn you play it, you're going to like literally kill your opponent's entire board is how you try to set up for it. That doesn't happen it can happen on turn 4, but like your goal when you're executing this card is to kill your opponent's whole board the turn they play it, and then they have to like kill this before they can even play more things to the board. And it's just kind of nice if you blight this first and maintain your board, because you know they're going to want to kill this ASAP anyways. So like this blighting onto itself and saving the rest of your board from the blight is pretty valuable.
Yeah. Boy, one of the cards that's almost like a bomb, especially in sealed, I think. Just at uncommon and a little bit unassuming, maybe, is Graveshifter. 4-mana 2/2 changeling. When it ETBs, you get a creature from your graveyard to your hand. There's a lot you could do with this.
Yeah, the 17's land data does not reflect this at all, but I kind of thought this was going to be the strongest uncommon in the set, and I still kind of draft that way.
It's very good. First of all, shapeshifters have been overperforming. They're super excellent, and then yeah, it's a slower format, so just having a format 2/2 rebuy creature is so nice. Fits into every deck. You can blink it. You could get it back to get other things back. You could loop two of them. If
this set
so
just has a
lucky to
lot
get
more
two.
weird things that like set this up than I feel like normal too, like self mill and things just trading off more stuff like that. More ETBs on the creatures, so you're more likely to just get like an Eclipsed Elf or something that this gets found by Eclipsed Elf, and then the Eclipsed Elf trades, and this gets it back, just stuff like that.
Totally, yeah, and it might even be better in sealed. So we'll have to see what the data says about that. Yeah, I mean, there's some other uncommons here. They're not quite as strong as some of the uncommons in the other colors, I don't think.
If you have the instance, the Nightmare Sower is quite powerful, I'll say. But it's hard to get from a deck that has that all align. But when it does all align, it's a bomb, I'd say.
Okay, I could see that.
I could see splashing it in certain decks that have a lot of instance even, because it's really powerful when it's working. I've been kind of soloed by this card a couple times, but that's in draft, so people draft knowing they have it, or maybe two of it, or stuff like that.
Yeah, this Douse of Donglo, this is a reanimate that if you cast it at instant speed, you just have to blight 2 as an additional cost. This also works with Twilight Diviner, although you don't end up with a ton of expensive creatures in your deck from my experience, so paying 5 mana for reanimate effect isn't great. What do you think about this card?
Yeah, I haven't seen this card cast, to be honest, so I don't think it's that good.
There you go. Yeah.
The Gloom Ripper, you don't have to be a full-on elf deck, by the way.
Just some elves. And it counts.
There's a lot of X ones too. It's not totally embarrassing to just. I wouldn't be excited to play no elves, but when this starts giving -3 toughness, it's excellent.
Yeah. Also, it's gonna be hard to have no elves or no change. Right?
It counts your graveyard too. So some games you just play this and it's just like +10, and they die and their best thing dies, and yeah.
Totally. Bloodline Binding, expensive card, but it's got Convoked. I assume this is probably a bomb. I've actually never played with or against it.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. Yeah, if you have a lot of the same creature type, it's probably going to be pretty good. Some of the self-mill stuff will help for sure.
And then, all the changelings coming into effect. And then I think, some of the black, there's a little bit of, self-blighting going on if you have some of the goblin theme cards, and then if you have some of the elves theme cards, you're going to be self-milling, like you said. So I think that's going to end up being pretty good in your black decks. We could move on to red. This Endblaze Epiphany card is funny. I drafted a deck with 2 of these, and I was kind of decking myself with them. So you got to be careful there. But otherwise, it can be a 2-for-1 removal spell.
Yeah, you only get 1 card off it no matter what. It weirdly doesn't care about what X is. It cares about the creature's power you targeted. So it's a weird card.
Cinder Strike, great common. The Blight 1, especially if you're only doing it once, it's pretty easy to pay. To get the 1 mana 4 damage spell.
Yeah, this might be my favorite common.
Yeah. Is this splashable in your mind? Is this enough damage?
Yeah, if you can kind of splash it easily, I wouldn't go really out of my way to splash it, but yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Ashling Rekindled, another really good flip creature, depending on the composition of your deck.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to splash this, is all I'd say. I would want to be a blue-red deck as a base to play this card. But I've gotten run over by this card from blue-red decks, just flipping it on turn 3 and playing 4. There's a lot of 4-drops and 6-drops and such in the Elementals deck, so they can do some pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, blue-red in particular lends yourself to it, whereas if you're splashing it, it's funny, it adds mana of any color, so you could kind of splash to get more fixing if you're 5-color deck, but then again, you're probably just elementals at that point. Kind of see what you're saying. Elementals has a lot of nice 2-drops. I'm noticing Flame Braider, Explosive Prodigy.
Yeah, the Explosive Prodigy also in the category. I would splash it because when you splash Vivid cards like this, they're like giving you one of the colors for free, and it's a color you're not normally playing.
Oh, right.
So it's like way more likely to deal 3 damage if you splash this than it is if you're base red and you're splashing some other color.
Yeah, totally. Flame Braider, very powerful card, specific to elementals. We're going to have to see how it does in sealed in particular. Obviously it's a card you can draft around, but depending on your pool, you might not be able to use it.
Nice to have if you get one of the Mythic Evoke elementals, where you might only be playing one of their colors, but if you happen to draw this with it, you can play it for the full like modes.
Let's see, what else is appealing here to you?
Not much. I mean, Seer's removal, Scuzzback Scrounger is kind of cool fixing. It's not like an absurd bomb or anything, but you do get. It's pretty easy to get the blights and the treasures out of it and feel pretty good about it.
Is red the worst color in this set?
I don't know. I guess people point to it like that. I have a lot of fun drafting the red decks. There's a group of commons I like, but in sealed it's going to be different. And you might not get everything together. I kind of like the Cinderstrike, the Brambleback Brute to blight onto with some of my things. I like playing a lot of cheap cards and removal with this Burning Curiosity card sometimes, but the Burning Curiosity card competes with the Zealot, which is in the 6 drops. We'll get to it later. But I think it's kind of like a grindy color in my mind and not a Goblins deck or an Elementals deck, it really.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, a lot of the removal leans towards killing small creatures, but yeah, there's a lot of like blight synergy stuff, and then Burning Curiosity. I mean, I've been pretty happy with this card. It's kind of like a draw 3 a lot of the time. You have to set it up a little bit, but I mean, 3-mana draw 3, even if you have to set it up, can be really powerful.
A good way to think about this card, and I think what you're talking about by set it up, is maybe when you lay out your deck, put it in like your 6-drop slots, because that's around the turn of the game you want to cast it.
Yeah, totally. So you set it up as like, yeah, you play it while you have maybe a little bit of mana available, and then also, ideally, you don't want to play it if you can flip a high number of cards, say 5 or 6 drops, that you wouldn't be able to cast on the next turn, because you don't want to get stuck both not being able to cast that plus exiling those, some of your more powerful cards from your deck.
Yeah, you just generally want to play it when you're out of other cards in your hand and other things that you have good plans to do with, because you're just going to basically be skipping ahead to the top decking portion of the game, but accelerate it.
Yeah, some more small damage removal. This red champion, how do you feel about this one? This one doesn't seem as good to me either.
Yeah, I changed my mind. This is the worst champion. I forgot about it. It was so bad.
Yeah, it is pretty bad. I could see putting it in my deck if I had a ton of elementals, but even then, like, it's just a 7/3. It could be killed so easily, so not super great. Goliath Daydreamer, that's a nice rare, huh?
Yeah, it's really broken. It's really, I guess I almost want to say boring in my experience. It either dies immediately or wins the game immediately. There's not like much else this card does.
Yeah. I have had it where my opponent played it and I was terrified for my life and they just never did anything with it.
Yeah, sometimes they won't have the instant or sorcery. But yeah, what's funny is if you put this in your deck without that many instants or sorceries, it's not that bad because it's a 4-mana 4/4. And if you do happen to get one of the instants or sorceries, it'll be a humongous upside. But also, what will happen is you'll play this and your opponent's going to be like, I have to bog through this, embrace that. I can't play my 4-drop. Like, they won't play anything else. They'll blight their guy, stuff like that.
They'll be terrified of it, yeah, and pretty rightfully so. I would recommend not putting Lava Leaper in your deck. This is like, play this guy, your opponent kills you.
Yeah, I thought about it for a long time with Two-Headed Giant. I was like, can our decks combined like play this and then have the other player win the game? And my answer was no, and then you would certainly lose. Anytime you play this and don't win in the same turn, which is really hard to do, I think, you will just lose almost always, I think.
It's such a funny card, and I love the art, both on the showcase and the regular thing. But yeah, it's almost a meme, honestly.
I mean, it's kind of funny if in Constructed, the 3-color mana bases went so far that nobody like played basics and you were just mono red or something, but...
Right, I think that's what it's there for. Sourbread Auntie, pretty good uncommon. It's got all those goblin keywords on it. You don't really have to be a goblin deck to play it. It's just sort of a good card.
Yep, it's made a lot of my half goblin decks for sure. It's a premium goblin. Yeah. So
it is 2 reds. You're not splashing it. Squawk Roaster kind of sucks, right? I mean, it has the thing going for it where it's only a single red and it's vivid, so it's like kind of nice to splash, but at the same time, all you're getting is kind of a dumb creature. So I don't know about this one.
I wouldn't splash it. If this makes the deck as like your 20 to 23rd card, it's not embarrassing. I think like a 4-mana 2/4 double strike is like a filler level kind of common power level card or whatever.
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of boy, looking at all these rares in red here. We've got 3 5-drop rares we're going to talk about. There's a lot of rares that are like pretty high upside that can do wild things that also could not work. I mean, obviously, Spine-Rock Tyrant is always going to be at least a 5-mana 6/6 flying, which is excellent. But how do you feel about these cards in general?
Probably not going to look to play the Collective Inferno and Sealed. It's kind of win more even if you have all the same creature type. I'm sure the occasional Goblins deck that's like all Goblins will want this. Soul Immolation, I think, is great. You do have to put some work into doing it. It's really weird where like you'll have a 5 toughness creature and a 1/1, and you cast this blighting 5, and you blight it all on your 1/1, and then their whole board takes 5 and you lose. My pre-mentioned first pre-release deck was black-red with the Champion of the Weird and with this, and I called my deck Red-Black Plague Winds because that's basically how it played out.
Yeah, this card seems insane. Funny enough, I also played it pre-release, and my opponent had this card, but he like didn't read it right. It is a confusing card, and he thought that he basically couldn't use it because he had a 2/2 out, and he thought it would be capped at 2, even though he also had a 5/5. So he just like let it sit in his hand, and I had to like explain it to him after the match how it works. It is an odd card. So how it works is you can only blight as much as your biggest creature is, but you can blight on any creature you have. So, yeah, it's not too hard. Like, even if you just only have a 3/3, it might still be pretty devastating.
Yeah, an interesting deck building decision I had because I had this and the Champion, which blighted it in weird ways, is I had the black equipment with Flash that gives +1/+2. And I kind of included it just so I could, like, set up blight plays with it. Because like +2 toughness, and you could move it around with the Champion of the Weird specifically too. Like you could blight a creature to death that's holding it 2 more than normal, and then move the equipment to something else and keep doing that.
Yeah. And then Spine-Rock Tyrant is a little bit like the Dreamcaster, where it's this a little bit more so where like the ability is a little more situational, but the body's better. 5-mana 6/6 flying is just huge, and it's going to be really threatening for your opponent. And then, of course, also the ability is going to be threatening whether or not you can even copy your spell. Some of the time, you'll be able to copy your removal spell, and it'll be insane.
Yep, and a lot harder to kill, because I do think 5 toughness is a point in the format where things get harder to kill by a lot.
Yeah. And then our last card is this common, and you mentioned you liked this one a little bit better as a basic.
I love this card. I would maybe splash it. I've played 5 of these in my draft decks before. It's just a 6/5 is huge. It draws a card when it enters, basically at that stage of the game. I love this card. I just think, like I said, with all these things regarding 5 toughness, I think this card is a must answer in play, and it's the 2-for-1 basically, and it's fixing if you are kind of desperate for it. Or it's also like, because it has basic land cycling, I don't like to view it as much as like I'm going to play less land, or I'm going to count this as my fixing. But it's like, yeah, sure, I'll play 5 of these. Like, it has basic land cycling if I draw a bunch, like.
Yeah, so basically, like, you don't want to count it as a land because it's actually a pretty good card. You want to cast it, but some of the times, even if you have 17, 18 lands in your deck, you need a land in whatever draw you have, so you could just land cycle it, and then just obviously makes the card more powerful.
Yeah, it's just kind of like cheating of, like, putting more 6-drops in your deck makes it like more powerful in the late game, but you also won't get clunked out too much on these. Like in the same vein of playing 5 of these, I've also played like 2 of these, but my deck has also just had like 3 more cards with similar mana costs.
Yeah, makes sense. Moving on to green, real quick, only because Outlaws of Thunder Junction, I don't remember what it was called exactly, but there was a 1-mana green protection spell in that format, and it was actually really good in sealed and draft. Is Blossoming Defense the same thing here, or is it not quite as good?
The card you're talking about is Snakeskin Veil, which gives a +1/+1 counter, which I actually think is a lot stronger. I think when I look at the data on these tricks, even 2-mana tricks that kind of do this too, like I wouldn't be surprised if the blue Flash Aura actually has better stats than this. Well, actually I would be, because Elves is so good in this format that the stats are all way higher. But like by comparison to other colors, I think that like most of the time you end up actually casting this as a protection spell, not as a combat trick. And yes, it costs 1 less, but like leaving around something is always so brutal, like, because it's like your opponent is killing this thing because it's already the best thing in play, probably. And so then when you like protect it and it's even better, like it's probably really correlated with, like win percentage in that way.
That makes sense. And I guess a lot of the time, plus one counters can like get your creature out of range sometimes to be killed again by a feature removal spell and that sort of thing, which this doesn't really do. Yeah, so a lot of solid cards in green at the lower mana cost. Nothing too insane.
Yeah, the Weaver I'm willing to splash. The 2/1 Eternal Witness type card.
Makes sense. Pretty easy to pull off, right? You don't really need to be Kithkin. Even like elves are going to have a lot of creatures in play.
Yeah, I mean, it also counts as self. You only need 2 creatures in play when you play this to be the third one.
Elementals can play it. Great Forest Druid. This is an example of a pretty nice card that provides 5 color fixing, 2 mana 04 to tap to create a mana of any color. So if you're in green, that's almost certainly going to make your deck, and it might allow for avenues of splashing.
Yeah, definitely. And 04, pretty cool. Actually, if you want to scroll down a little just to skip ahead, I'm looking at 10 to the Sprigs. I wanted to talk about that for fixing. This card's really easy to misread. The search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tap. Then if you control 7 or more lands and or tree folk, create a 3/4 tree folk with reach. So the fact that like this 04 fixer plays well with this and any changelings you have, you don't even need like actual other tree folk in your deck. It's not that weird for like this 10 the Sprigs card to get you the 3/4 reach on like turn 4 in some decks. Like if you play the 04 on turn 2 and you play a changeling on turn 3 and you hit your land drop, then you'll have 7 after this resolves. Just something to keep an eye out for.
And if you could imagine, let's say you had like a 4 mana, 4 or 5 mana 3/4 tree folk with reach that just ETB'd and got a land, that'd be a pretty good card. So this is nice. And you could always ramp on turn 3 if you need to. If you have literally nothing else going on, you have expensive cards in your hand. Pretty good card, pretty good fixing.
Yeah, it's like, you splash these expensive cards, and then you're happy to like get this out of your hand fast to unload your expensive splashy cards, but also you can play the game for it being a 3/4 reach later.
Let's see, Chomping Changeling. I've been putting this in kind of all my decks. I really liked him. I think in sealed, you should be pretty happy putting him in your deck as well.
Yeah, I wasn't sure, because I've actually come to the opposite conclusion in draft that I don't want to main deck this card. But when it works, it's absurd, because the 2-for-1 and it's the changeling.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I've been happy with him even in draft, but just the fact that he's a changeling is pretty big. I'm certainly going to recommend you put him in your deck in sealed, and you can see how that goes. Like, maybe you shouldn't do that, but I imagine it's going to be good. That's where I'm at with it anyways.
Yeah, makes sense.
Formidable Speaker, funny, we talked about this for Constructed. Gets better the better your deck is, basically. Doesn't do anything too crazy on its own.
Yeah, you'll probably have some other rares to get. I had Doran to get and Gloom Ripper in my second pre-release with it. Pretty cool to turn 4 Doran off of this guy, because he's a 4/6 when he attacks, but...
Nice. Yeah. Mutable Explorer. Splashable? What do you think?
No, I'm not that impressed by it. It almost didn't make the cut in one of my decks, I mean, it's kind of small ball. It mostly just helps with the typal synergies, I think. I mean, the Mutavault is like a little bit of value, but none of the parts of this card make it into combat that much, I'll say.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess I'd want to be pretty on curve with it, because if you're not really ramping with it, you're maybe not doing enough. Tristan, Callous Cultivator, pretty strong card, a little more dependent on being elves.
Yeah, it's a little weaker than it looks, I'll say. I mean, so it's a 3 mana 3/4 Death Touch, so that's awesome. And the draining part of it is pretty cool, but has a pretty clear limit where like you just can't flip this that many times. If you're the beatdown and hitting them hard, then yeah, absolutely. This is nice, and if you could probably get 4 or 6 life out of this card before you deck or whatever, but not that much more.
The Green Champion's insane. It's got Glimpse of Nature stapled onto it, and it's a 4 mana 6/6. Holy cow. Moon Vigil Adherence. This is another just giant creature. I don't know. Every time this has been in play, it's just been like, 4 mana 6/6, 4 mana 7/7 trample. So super happy with this card.
Yep, really strong. Once again, maybe treat it more as a more top-endy card than just 4. It's probably not that big on turn 4, is all I'll say. But
yeah, Although sometimes you can, run it on turn 4, and then on the next turn you can play a mill
Definitely.
spell or
Yep.
something of that sort. Pitiless Fists, green removal. You'll probably need to play it if you're in green, but definitely be careful with this card. It's kind of expensive, and it's hard to just walk it into open mana because it is a fight spell, and a lot of things can go wrong, but it's a decent card.
Yeah, I wanted to point out Prismatic Undercurrents because it might not look playable, but I did play it, and I was kind of surprised with it. It's not that different from like Explosive Vegetation. I think you kind of want to aim to actually play this on a turn you haven't played a land yet, and then like play 2 lands, and maybe you're like your splashed Pacifism or Blossom Bind or something like that on the same turn. The additional land per turn part of this card makes it a lot more reasonable. And in some games I played it, I was just getting 4 lands, which I wasn't using all 4 of those lands, but like the games go long and my deck is just a lot less filled with lands.
Yeah, how many lands do you have to get out of this when you play it on turn 4 to be happy?
I mean, I don't know. It's the context of your deck, right? If you get 2 lands out of this and they're fixing your colors, like you might be pretty happy about that.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, that makes sense to me. Certainly, if you're only getting 1, you probably don't want to.
Yeah, that would be kind of a disaster, definitely.
Some of these, I've liked some of these big creatures. Pummeler for Hire, probably an obviously good one. Miss Meadow Council's nice, just cantripping, big creature. Even Safe Right Cavalry looks kind of bad, but I've been pretty happy with it. I mean, it's a big creature, and this ability to give an elf +2/+2 can be nice.
Yeah, it's a really scary creature when it doesn't die. It's kind of really hard to block.
Mm-hmm. It's decent, like, it's pretty good against Blossom Bind in the sense that your opponent can't really Blossom Bind it effectively, or there's a couple other lockdown spells that don't work against it. So that's nice. Yeah, pretty much all of these other rares are pretty nice.
Yeah, I'm willing to splash the Miss Meadow Council, I guess I'll say. I love just 2 for 1s. It's kind of big.
Oh, yeah. The common, too. Yeah. 1 less for a Kithkin. I guess even if you don't have a Kithkin, it's not the worst, right? 5-mana 4/3 draw card.
Yeah, though I'll say 2 of the cards that are really good at splashing this are 3-mana Kithkin. That one is a Manalith that taps for any color, and the other one is the 1/2 Changeling. So it's actually kind of really convenient to splash it.
Nice. Selfless Safe Right. Pretty good card. Green, so not really a splash card, but it's got Convoke, Flash, so you're pretty much always going to be able to do something good with this. I don't know how often you're going to get like a total board blowout or anything like that, but it's going to be good for sure.
Yeah, sometimes you get a total board blowout. This card would be really, really good if it said target creature you control gets hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, in my opinion. So the fact that it can give multiple is pretty good.
Yeah. Spry and Mighty can be powerful. You have to be a little careful with how you're building your deck. You want to make sure you have enough small creatures and enough big creatures, I suppose. And then also you have to pick your spots when you're casting it. So you don't always want to cast it into open mana, especially if they can blow it out by killing either like your 1 small creature or your 1 big creature. But sometimes you can cast it into open mana if you have a big enough board, because as it resolves, you get to choose the creatures. So you don't target beforehand. So your opponent can stop you if you only have a couple options, like if you only have 1/1/1, say. But even then, if they make this card worse with a removal spell, you might still draw a couple cards and pump a creature by +2/+2. So pretty strong card.
Also, you count creatures with negative power, and it works pretty nicely with Blight.
Nice. I didn't think of that. So if you've got a -1, 2 or something, then the difference will be higher. So that's cool. Prisma Basher. Another nice Vivid card. Unfortunately, it's double green, so that's going to trap you a little bit, but this card can be a pretty big swing, and, these big tramplers end up playing pretty well in Sealed in general.
Yeah, I agree. This card, and we'll get to Glister Baron, I would look at these more as, like, green cards than Vivid cards. The Vivid kind of, as you start playing a bunch of colors, I think ideally you're more of a control deck, and I've found, you don't really need a card like this. You need cards that just stabilize you, not cards that are aggressive like this. But this card, like in Elves, even on 2 colors, is really strong. But occasionally they're gonna have like the random spot hybrids that get it to 3 or things like that.
Yeah. Tell me about some of these other Vivid cards. Obviously, these are we've got one at Mythic and one at Common, both 7 mana though. What do you think of these?
Yeah, they're both really strong. I mean, the Aurora Awakener seems totally splashable. In draft, I've splashed the Pummeler. Actually, I think a really eye-opening moment in this format for me was one of my earlier drafts. I drafted like Black Green Elves, and I thought, I mostly just had like a Morkant and a bunch of stuff at the common level. And I had two of these Wildvine Pummelers in my sideboard, and even some white cards in my hybrids. But I realized by the end of the draft I was supposed to main deck both of them because I just didn't have any top end, and a 5 mana 6/5 trample, which because I had like multiple black green gold cards, I thought was really realistic. Would have been like a great top end for my kind of aggro deck, and I just kind of didn't respect that a 6/5 reach trample is quite good stats in this format.
Okay, that's interesting. I haven't played this format as much as you, and I think I don't. I haven't had a Pro Tour to play for, but I haven't been playing this card really. So certainly in sealed, I think I would try it. But maybe I'm gonna open my eyes to it a bit more in draft too. It is really big. The Aurora Awakener, 7 mana, 7/7. You roll some dice, put some stuff into play. I assume this is a great card too.
Yeah, it's huge. You'll hit some lands sometimes, sure, but a lot of times my opponent plays against me and they hit like 2 lands and a really good card or something.
Yeah. And then Sapling Nursery, excellent card, right? But how many forests are you gonna try to shoehorn into your deck for this?
Yeah, you probably want to be more on like the playing 10 forests range of things. You don't have to be like a mono green deck by any means. This can be pretty good at 5 or 6 mana.
I did have a 3-color elemental deck that was like green red with a pretty heavy blue splash, and I probably had 8 forests, but lots of fixing type stuff, and I mean it was good there. So I can imagine still playing it. I mean, even if you can like ramp into it costing 6 mana or whatever, it can still take over a game. Moving on to the multicolor cards. These Eclipsed cards are some of the most honestly broken cards in this format if you can get them on their color pair. Are there any of them that you would play? Because in sealed you're not going to come up with it as a cohesive a deck as often. Are there any of them you would play off color maybe, or with less hits than normal, anything like that?
Yeah, I've played I think every single one of them in off color decks actually.
Okay.
It helps that I draft a lot of changelings. Yeah, I lean into it. I think of it more as, an expensive card, late game thing. But also, there's some surprising fixing. We'll get to it later, but I'm a big fan of the Foraging Wickermaw. So I've had a lot of games where I play the Wickermaw in 2, and it fixes my color for my random Eclipse thing on 3.
Yeah, that makes sense. And remember, even if you're off color, right? Like if you're in green-white and you play the Eclipse Marrow, you can hit changelings and you can hit planes, or you could hit, maybe you have a merfolk or two.
Exactly.
That's pretty good. And then these creatures are like decent on rate. So anytime they're a 2-for-1 anticipate thing, like on color, they're actually really insane. And if I open these in my seal pool, I'd be pretty attracted to playing those 2 colors, especially if I was gifted with multiple or something like that. I mean, it's only an uncommon.
Yeah, the Flamekin is by far my favorite one because it's easier to cast. And I talked about a lot of random kind of splashable, uncommon Vivid cards, and they're elementals. So I just am like playing this in like my blue-green deck that's splashing for Kithkeeper or stuff like that. That's a made-up example, but it's kind of exactly what I'm talking.
Yeah, and if you digging towards your bombs is kind of insane with these play out really nicely.
Yeah, these evoke elementals at Mythics, all elementals too, so stuff like that.
The Kithkin one is kind of nice too because it's only 2 mana. So if you play this in your like Merfolk deck, you're going to be able to cast it faster.
Agreed.
With just that white. Yeah, honestly, multicolor cards in sealed are pretty obviously strong, and they're pretty obviously narrow typically. If maybe we could talk about ones that would be like particularly splashable. Obviously, the commands, most of the commands in the Deepway Navigator, that sort of thing, aren't really going to fit that bill.
Yeah, honestly, I wouldn't mind kind of just speeding through this a little, where it's like these Merfolk are pretty Merfolk related. I'll say they're not very much else going on here. It's nice that they're sorted by color pairs. These are black-blue cards. I like this Dream Harvest card. I think you should play it in sealed if you can cast it every time. These goblins are less goblin-y cards because it's a 2/3 death touch, and Grub's Command is like a removal spell that can pump your team and give it haste, or copy a changeling, or whatever random goblin you have that's good. Obviously, if you're a dedicated goblin deck, you could pick that mill 5 mode. I guess also in a really long game, it does say target player mills 5 cards. So sometimes you might deck your opponent with this.
Yeah, this one's just really good. You're almost always going to destroy a creature with it, but that's nice.
Yeah, the green-red cards, the Gangly Stompling, kind of good in aggressive decks. The Noggle Robber, obviously great for splashing. The Vibrance, you could play in any deck that's red and probably don't care that much to play it if you're green. You don't really need to care about the green mode that much. Figure of Fable might be the best card in the whole set. It goes in every deck. It's really hard to not play this. If you open it, it eventually becomes a game-winning card. Though I guess I've found it kind of slow to roll out, and I've not played with it, but played against it twice now and beaten it. So maybe I no longer think it's the best card in the set.
It is very good. Yeah, if you could get it up to the third mode there, that white, or green, 3 colored symbols there, so that might be hard on a splash, but regardless, even if you just use the first 2 abilities, that can be really good.
Bridget's Command, a lot better than like Sig's Command because it's got like a +3/+3 and fight built into it, so it's like pretty decent removal even if you're not a Kithkin deck. Also, I found, I don't know, I've cloned like the Imbuer, the 4/3 that draws a card, the 2/1 that returns something from your graveyard to your hand, random value changelings. So obviously random value changelings are true of all the commands, but I think there's some notable ETB Kithkin that I've just kind of played in a lot of my decks. Abigail's really good. I think I would aim to like play it on a 3-power creature on your side of the board, and then 3-power first strike flying lifelink is just really dominant. I've also chump blocked with Abigail and like returned it a lot of times with the grave shifter, stuff like that. The Feastling is go ahead.
Don't get confused with Abigail. I mean, in Constructed, you're trying to like combo it or whatever to shut down some particular creature of your own, but with this, you put these keywords onto pretty much any big creature you have, and then you also have this 1/1 that has some nice keywords on it, so that could be really good. In a pinch, you could put it on your opponent's creature too if they have an insanely good creature in play, but
it's really hard to race like 4-power flying lifelink. You can a lot of games can just involve you attacking for 4 every turn and gaining 4 life, and your opponent can't like realistically kill you if they don't answer that.
And then first strike can be a broken ability on defense too if you need it.
Definitely. The Feastling is one of my favorite changelings at common. I'll just say 2/3 lifelink for 3 has felt like pretty good stats in this format, and there's a ton of like weird random ways to buff it and stuff, and I've just found this card to be very impressive.
Makes sense. Easy to cast.
Reaping Willow is like a total bomb, but one of the harder things to cast, but I have played it in, just decks that are only one of these colors a lot of the time because it's a really powerful payoff, and sometimes you blight onto it a lot and you get more things back.
Yeah, and you can do this really late in the game and it's still really good. Strong card there. Blue-red. Yeah, blue-red cards are good where the blue-red cards are good.
Yeah, I mean, Sanar, I wanted to say, is not that much of a vivid card. You kind of want to be more of a blue-red deck because you want to hit cards that match the colors of things you have in play. I will say it's worded so perfectly. You pick what cards you actually want to exile after you reveal them all, and you shuffle every other card back into your library. So, like, in no way does this deck you or randomly exile your uncastable bombs or things like that, You hit what you hit, and you look at your hand because you've already drawn for turn, and you decide, do I want to cast any of these this turn? Yes, I keep them. No, they shuffle into my deck. And your lands get shuffled back too.
Yeah, I wish that red rare was labeled better so you didn't have to deck yourself with it. But yeah, this works out perfect. This is basically, you could ignore Vivid and just put it in any deck that could cast it, and it'll be good.
Yeah, and like it's often sometimes hard to cast 2 cards off it anyways. I've played with this, and it's just like draw 1 spell that you have to cast extra per turn, like very often.
Yeah. Ashley's Command might also be one of the ones you're more willing to splash because it can have kind of a big effect. Let's see, is this Lorwyn a good card? It's a bit of an odd one.
Yeah, I had it recently for the first time and was kind of impressed. Like I just ended up getting, like I had an Evolving Wells in my deck too, and a little bit more Surveil or Self Mill. So yeah, by the time I activated it, I was getting like 4 worms and then 5 worms, and that was pretty cool. And it's pretty decent for just a cheap card.
Well, yeah. Elves cards, Elves rares, good when you have them.
Yeah, Tristan's Command might be actually what I would call the best card in the set after playing with cards a lot. I mean, it's just like...
Yeah, it's insane. You can get it back with... what is this card called? It's a sick combo. You get it back with Dawn Blessed Pennant, and you can just loop it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Dawn Blessed Pennant, it just gets you when it comes into play. You name a permanent, you name Elf Fairy. Name one of the types, and then you can get back any card with that type. So you can get back a sorcery, and then that command can get it back plus another thing plus kill something. So that's definitely a combo to look out for.
Yeah, the Tristan command is so funny because the copy of Elf mode is very rarely used. It's usually always destroy a creature, and then you either return 2 things from your graveyard to your hand, or you kill them.
Run, yeah. Some really good red-white cards, even though, again, red-white isn't like a supported type. If you end up in a red-white deck or a 3-color deck, these could be really good. Catharsis and Bree of Clan Stout Arm. Tam Mindful First Year. This is a really easy card to cast, and it can be really powerful in play, especially if you get it down early. It's just, decent creature you're not afraid to play, and then it protects all of your bombs if you just let it sit untapped. Kind of use it as a Mother of Runes type effect.
Yeah, it also can tap target even itself and give you 5 colors for Vivid.
Which can be insane with some Vivid cards. Most of them don't ever get up to 5, so that could be really good.
Wistfulness, be blue, don't be green. Obviously, you can be both if you want, but you could sideboard it, or you could maybe play it in a green deck, but I wouldn't be excited to play it in a green deck, and I would be excited to play it in a blue deck.
Right, blue or blue-green. Doran.
I think Doran's really strong.
Okay.
I'll point out, because people don't seem to notice this. The +X+X, where X is the difference, means this works with creatures with higher power than toughness as well. The deck I talked about with the Formidable Speaker, one of my opponents I killed with Kithkeeper, where I pumped it up to 12 and attacked for 21 flying.
21?
Yeah, because it's a 12/3 and it gets +9/9. I just played like a control roll the whole game, and then found my Doran and activated my Kithkeeper 3 times, and just one-shot them after kind of being on the back foot the whole game.
Nice. Okay. And then Marlin, Fae Ascendant. Obviously a great card if you can cast it and have elves, fairies, or changelings.
Yeah, you also, often when you play with this card, you'll probably deck your opponent.
Oh, funny. Like if you don't kill them with the cards you're getting.
Yeah.
They'll probably lose that way.
Yep.
A lot of fixing options in colorless now. That could be pretty nice. Could also be pretty sad if you open a pool that doesn't have them.
Yeah, without any common lands, it's weird.
Favorite?
Probably the Changeling Wayfinder, but I like the Core and the Wickermaw a lot too. The Wickermaw's cool for Vivid. The Core has been surprisingly good for me. Once again, cards that say Changeling on them just continually overperform. Scaling into like the 4/4 at instant speed can be hard to attack to, and you get kind of flooded later, or it can close out a game. Super impressed with it.
Yeah, and then some Changelings, perhaps the single card that if you could open in a pool you would choose, which is Chronicle of Victory. It's just going to go in every deck, and it's going to lead to your Chronicle of Victory if you draw it.
Yeah, I guess you don't need that many creature types of the same thing, and you just have to match what you have in play currently, or maybe what's in your hands to be pretty strong, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
It's like what I was talking about with Oko, where like if you get a couple things going with this, you're going to be pretty happy.
Yeah.
And Shocklands for fixing too, and Evolving Wilds. Keep those in mind. People love to complain that they opened lands in their rare slots, but guess what? Now you get like 3 rares per pack, and I'm just ecstatic sometimes to get a Shockland in my sealed pool, because it means I can play more of my rares.
Yeah, totally. Especially in a format with no other dual lands. It could definitely come up that it would be quite helpful. Okay, folks. Well, thanks for listening. I know these sealed episodes can be a bit long, but we like to go through most of the cards, just so you know which ones to look for when you're building your sealed pools. Good luck this weekend playing in the Arena Direct if you're playing, or if you're playing in the Pro Tour like Jacob is. Good luck to you as well.
Thanks.
We will see you next time, folks. I want to remind you can follow us over on patreon.com/StockUpPodcast. You get access to all of our exclusive content for just $1 a month. I'm going to be posting some standard decks I've been working on over there before the Pro Tour, so keep an eye out for that. You can also follow us on YouTube, listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. So thanks very much, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.